You're watching Behind the Headlines. I'm Lee Pacquiao. By now, you're probably aware of the problem in legal education. Too many students are being graduated from law school with too much debt, and there are just not enough high-paying jobs to go around. My guest today has an interesting proposal to give students the option to take the bar at the end of the second year of law school and forego their third and final year. Joining me now is Samuel Estreicher, professor at NYU School of Law. We're thrilled to have him here. Welcome.
Thank you.
Interesting plan. You want to amend the rules of the New York State Court of Appeals to allow students to take the New York State bar exam after 2 years of law school.
Yes.
Why?
Well, two reasons. One is I want to help students not take on some of the debt they're taking on. Currently, the cost of legal education in New York City is over $50,000 a year. Mm-hmm. That doesn't include room and board, nor does it include the income they give up. And most of these students are not, in fact, getting legal employment that will help them pay off that debt.
Mm-hmm. Now,
it's just not a good value proposition
Sure.
for these students. And what I'm trying to do is increase the choice available to them by changing the rules, or encouraging the court to change the rules, whereby if they take 2 years of law school and the second year might be required courses, they can sit for the bar. They don't get the college degree, the law school degree, mm-hmm. but they can sit for the bar and practice law if they can get a job.
Mm. Why not take out the third year altogether?
Well, we could do that too. This is a less draconian move than that, because this still allows the law school to do what it feels like doing. For many students, law school is value. In many law schools, they're getting value, or they don't care because they have got a high-paying job waiting for them. I actually would like to encourage all law schools to provide a better set of educational services for their students. So they help their students practice law and make a living, serve properly their client base when they get out of law school. Currently, the third year is not well suited to their needs, the student needs.
What for the people that take advantage of this program, should it come to pass, and leave law school after 2 years, sit for the bar, and go out into the workforce, what types of jobs do you anticipate them getting? I mean, aren't they going to be at a disadvantage going for a job at, say, Cravath to, say, a fully cooked law student that did 3 years and got the JD?
They might be. The students that are likely to get jobs at Cravath are, in the short term, they're likely to finish law school. We're talking about other students. There are many different tiers of the legal profession, different kinds of clientele. Most of the graduates of these law schools are not going to get jobs with the major firms. I'm concerned about those students, and I'm concerned about the clients that they're going to interact with. Most graduates, if they're doing legal work, finishing law school, they're working either for themselves in a solo practice or in a small firm practice, or they're just not doing legal work.
Now, looking at this from the perspective of law schools, we've learned over the course of this program, the last 2 years we've been running it, that people who run law schools view them as businesses or something analogous to businesses. Right. This proposal means lower revenue streams for law schools. How do you anticipate law schools reacting to that?
I think there'll be some initial resistance from law schools, not all law schools. For some law schools, I think it'll be a challenge. So to give you an example, I just co-authored a piece, an op-ed piece in the New York Times with the Dean of the Northwestern University School of Law, Dan Rodriguez. He sees that as an opportunity. Schools will have to adjust. It's hard. They have some fixed costs. They've got building costs. They've got faculty costs. But they can actually create first of all, not all the students will leave law school, number one. Number two, they may be able to make up some of that tuition loss with international students or students from other schools. And number three, I think they've got to start thinking of themselves in an ongoing, continuing relationship with their students. So if the student goes out and practices law, let's say in solo practice, and realizes, I'm really interested in labor law, I'm really interested in matrimonial law, the law school can provide a kind of continuing link. Hey, come to our night classes in matrimonial law, take 6 points, you'll be halfway towards getting your degree. So in other words, rather than load up the front end, provide opportunity at the back end for these young lawyers when they get a better sense of what they need.
So adopting a proposal like this isn't necessarily going to mean larger classes or tuition hikes. Because when I first saw this proposal, I got to be honest, I just thought, well, law schools are going to jack their tuitions 33% overnight and make up for the difference that way. I mean, it's got to come from somewhere, right?
Some schools might. I think most schools don't have that ability. I think even the great brand schools will not have the ability to jack up their costs much more than they're currently.
But I mean, tuition's gone up year over year for
yes, because,
as long as I've been on this planet.
First of all, tuition's gone up across the country.
Mm-hmm.
It's gone up. It's nearly doubled since 2000, and in part it's because the law in many of these states is not giving a sufficient choice to the law student. I'm
Mm-hmm.
trying to create more choice, and they're adding to faculty. They're adding program, and much of it is funded also by the loan forgiveness programs, the publicly subsidized programs. So those will continue to some extent, but I'm saying the schools will have to be more responsive to these students. They may lose some income. It may not be a bad thing if some of these schools consolidate with other schools. I'm not telling them to do that. But right now, as you yourself said, we have a large oversupply of law schools in many parts of the country.
It sounds like this proposal would almost accelerate that market recalibration that we've talked about before.
It will to some extent, which will be a good thing, by the way. But I think if a law school takes advantage of the challenge, they will continue to be relevant in the lives of their students in the ways that I suggested.
I know it's very hard to make determinations like this, but on a percentage basis, how much overcapacity do we have in terms of law schools in this country? Is this something where if 2 out of 5 law schools close their doors, we'd get to where we need to be? Is it 1 out of 10?
I really don't have a sense of that. I'm certain it's different in different centers, different cities. New York City has, I think, 14 law schools, and that may not be a sustainable number, even though New York City has a lot of legal business. I just don't know where that's going to go. I think that is not a very strong argument, in my view, for continuing the third year. In other words, the finances of the law schools. I'm a dean. If I were a dean, I'd be very concerned, but that's not a good reason for imposing a level of debt on these students where there is no value justifying that cost.
How do you expect the legal profession to react to a proposal like this? Is this going to mean that people are going to pay very, very low prices for someone who had 2 years of law school and then passed the bar? Or
well, that's also hard to tell. To some extent, the big law firms are subsidizing the growth plans, the hiring plans of these major law schools because they are funding their young lawyers at a level that may not be justified in terms of the contribution those young lawyers make. Many clients, for example, are very resistant to paying bills in the big firms for the services of their first-year lawyers. So there'll be some pressure there as well. I don't know how it's going to shake out. I think if the law schools, as I say, there'll need to be some consolidation in some places, but many of these law schools have a terrific alumni. They need to take advantage of their alumni and use their alumni to teach skills to these students that reflect the kind of work they're going to do and the kind of clients they're going to have. If they do that, many of these students will remain because there'll be a value proposition.
We've heard a lot about the skills gap in the last 2 years.
Right.
It's a really interesting idea. In effect, the 2-year option is going to probably create a bifurcated profession of sorts. You would have generalists with 2-year degrees and specialists with 3-year degrees. Is that correct? Is that something to be desired?
I don't think so. And we're always concerned about tiers within the legal profession. There are tiers now within the legal profession. There are those that work for the major firms, those that are academics, and there's everyone else. And they serve middle income to poor people. And those are the folks I'm concerned about because these students are currently incurring debt and not being trained to serve their clientele. So I see this as an access to justice proposal, not just relieving the debt load from the students.
You had an event on Friday
that
you mentioned before. Presumably you talked to a lot of people about your proposal afterwards. How was it received? Is this something that you think could get picked up?
Well, my wife happens to be a former law professor.
Right, she taught me corporate law.
She says I've got a 60% chance, and she's ordinarily not that optimistic. The reason she thinks this is in the wind is because the schools are not being able to place their students in jobs. I mean, you can't have an educational model that requires this much money from students where you cannot deliver on the job. And many of these students will either not go into the legal profession at all, or they're going to serve, as I said, poor to middle income people in a solo or small firm practice, which is fine, which is great, but they're not trained to do it. They're paying money, and they're not being trained. And I'm trying to create an incentive for law schools to say, you know what? This student isn't just an income widget. This is a student whose loyalty we want to keep. We have alumni. We're going to get them involved in teaching that young student skills that young student needs to practice law.
Very interesting idea. Professor, thank you for stopping by.
Thank you.
That's Professor Samuel Estreicher, professor at NYU School of Law. If you'd like to learn more about the issues we just discussed, be sure to check out our offerings on BloombergLaw.com and also on the Bloomberg Terminal. You can see more of our videos on YouTube, and you can follow our updates, of course, on Twitter. I'm Lee Pacquiao. Thank you for watching.